Welcome to our channel. Listening to stories helps you learn new words and hear natural pronunciation. It trains your ears to recognize English. Let's begin.
Detective Ethan Cole sat in his office. It was late, and the city was quiet. He was about to go home when the phone rang. A woman's voice whispered, "Detective, my husband is missing. Please help me." Ethan sat up. "Who is your husband?" he asked. "Dr. Richard Bennett," she said. "He left work last night and never came home. I don't know what to do." Ethan took a deep breath. Missing people cases were common, but something about her voice made him uneasy. This case felt different. Ethan met Laura Bennett at his office. She looked worried. "My husband is a scientist," she said. "He usually works late, but he always comes home. Last night, he didn't." Ethan took notes. "Did he call or leave a message?" Laura shook her head. "No. His phone is off, and his car is still parked at his office. I checked this morning." Ethan frowned. A man does not just disappear without a trace. Ethan drove to Dr. Bennett's research lab. The building was dark and quiet. The security guard at the front door looked nervous. "Dr. Bennett left around midnight," the guard said. But something was strange. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. The guard hesitated. He was alone, but he kept looking over his shoulder, like someone was following him. Ethan's instincts told him this was more than just a missing person case. Something was wrong. Ethan asked to check the security cameras. The footage showed Dr. Bennett leaving the building at 11:57 p.m. He walked quickly, looking around as if he was afraid. Then, just before he reached his car, he disappeared into the shadows. Ethan rewound the video. It didn't make sense. Where did he go? Laura looked at the video. "Where is his briefcase?" she asked. Ethan looked again. In the footage, Dr. Bennett had nothing in his hands. "He always carries a black briefcase," Laura said. "It has his research." Ethan nodded. If the briefcase was missing, it meant someone had taken it, or forced him to leave it behind. Ethan checked Dr. Bennett's phone records. His last call was to a private number just before he left work. "Who owns this number?" Laura asked. Ethan shook his head. "It's unregistered." That meant whoever he called didn't want to be found. Ethan questioned a night janitor who worked at the lab. "I saw Dr. Bennett," the man said. "He was talking to someone in a black car, but I couldn't see their face." "What happened next?" Ethan asked. "The car drove away. Dr. Bennett followed it on foot. That was the last time I saw him." Ethan felt a chill. Why would Dr. Bennett leave with a stranger so late at night? Ethan searched Dr. Bennett's office. Everything looked normal, but then he saw a small piece of paper on the desk. It read, "If anything happens to me, look inside the clock." "What does that mean?" Laura asked. "I don't know," Ethan said, "but it must be important." Ethan looked around the room and saw an old wooden clock on the shelf. Carefully, he opened the back. Inside, he found a folded piece of paper. It had one word written on it, Project Shadow. Laura gasped. "Project Shadow is my husband's secret research. He never talked about it." Ethan frowned. "Do you know what it is?" "No," she said, "but if he hid this note, it must be dangerous." Ethan knew they were running out of time. Dr. Bennett's life could be in danger. Suddenly, Ethan's phone rang, he answered. A deep voice said, "Stop looking for Dr. Bennett." Before Ethan could speak, the call ended. Ethan traced the phone call to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. "Is Richard there?" Laura asked. "I don't know," Ethan said, "but we have to find out." The warehouse was dark and silent. Ethan stepped carefully, holding his flashlight. The air smelled of dust and oil. He moved between old crates, looking for any sign of Dr. Bennett. Then he heard a sound, a soft moan. Someone was inside. Ethan's heart beat faster. Was Dr. Bennett still alive? He followed the noise and stepped deeper into the warehouse. Ethan turned a corner and froze. Dr. Bennett was there, tied to a chair, blindfolded and shaking. His suit was dirty, and his breathing was heavy. Ethan ran to him. "Dr. Bennett, can you hear me?" the scientist groaned. Who is that?" His voice was weak. He had been there for hours. Ethan reached for his pocket knife to cut the ropes, but before he could, a deep voice echoed through the warehouse. "That's far enough, detective." The man stepped out of the shadows. He wore black from head to toe and had a ski mask covering his face. In his hand, he held a gun, pointed directly at Ethan. Ethan froze, slowly raising his hands. "I don't want trouble," he said calmly. "I just want Dr. Bennett." The masked man shook his head. "You shouldn't have come here, detective. Now you know too much." Ethan studied him carefully. His stance, his voice, something was familiar. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. The man tilted his head. "I think you already know." Dr. Bennett coughed. "Ethan, don't let them take my research." The masked man sighed. "Doctor, we gave you a choice. You didn't listen." Ethan glanced at Dr. Bennett. "What is Project Shadow?" Bennett hesitated, then whispered, "It's a formula, a discovery that could change everything. They want to erase it." Ethan felt a chill. Was this about money, power, or something more dangerous? Ethan knew he had to act fast. He noticed a metal pipe on the floor, just a few feet away. "Chikitsak ko jane do, usne kaha, ek chota kadam aage badte hue." The masked man laughed. "I don't think so." Ethan lunged. In one quick move, he grabbed the pipe and knocked the gun away. It slid across the floor. Ethan tackled the man while Dr. Bennett struggled against the ropes. "Run, doctor," Ethan shouted. R. Bennett was free, but before they could escape, the kidnapper grabbed a flare gun from his belt. "You're not leaving," he shouted, aiming at a stack of wooden crates. Boom! The flare hit and flames exploded through the warehouse. Thick smoke filled the air. Ethan coughed. "We have to go now." He pulled Dr. Bennett toward the exit. The fire spread quickly. The kidnapper ran toward the back door. Ethan tried to follow, but flames blocked his path. Dr. Bennett stumbled. "Ethan, we can't go that way." Ethan looked around. He spotted a metal door on the side. He ran to it and pushed, locked. The smoke thickened. They had seconds to escape. Ethan saw a fire extinguisher on the wall. He grabbed it and smashed the lock on the metal door. The door burst open, and fresh air rushed in. He helped Dr. Bennett through, just as the warehouse roof collapsed behind them. They coughed, gasping for breath. They were safe, but the kidnapper was gone. Dr. Bennett sat on the ground, shaking. "He was going to kill me," Ethan nodded. "Do you know who he was?" Bennett hesitated. I think so, but I need proof." Ethan looked back at the burning warehouse. If the kidnapper had escaped, this wasn't over. As the fire trucks arrived, Ethan checked his phone. There was a new message. It was from an unknown number. The text read, "You should have stayed out of this." Ethan's stomach tightened. Someone was watching. Dr. Bennett reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "This is my research," he said. "It's why they took me." Ethan took the drive. "We need to keep this safe." Dr. Bennett nodded. "If it falls into the wrong hands, it could be dangerous." Ethan thought about the masked man. His voice, his movements, they were familiar. Was he someone Ethan had met before? A criminal, a government agent, or someone closer? The detective knew one thing: the case wasn't over yet. Ethan looked at the city lights. Somewhere, the kidnapper was still out there, watching, waiting. This wasn't just about Dr. Bennett. It was bigger, more dangerous. Ethan took a deep breath. He had solved many cases before, but this was only the beginning. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's story. Now, take some time to translate and study the new words from the story. This will help you improve your English and remember new vocabulary. Try to.